Man.
Well, I threw my kids. I threw Levi out of the house by his hair. The girls went out the window. My eyes were burnt shut. It felt like somebody hit me in the face with 5 baseball bats at the same time. I could be sitting 2 feet from you, and you're not there. You're not there. You are not there. And it was pink elephants flying.
You are not able to tell the truth right now. I need to put on a show to make it so nobody knows it happened. Showtime.
911, what's location of your emergency?
Yes, I live at 885 Yale Farm Road.
Okay.
I think I need an ambulance.
Okay, what's going on?
The truck fell on my stepson.
The truck fell on your stepson?
Yes, and we just got home, and I don't think he's alive.
You don't think he's alive?
No, 885.
Okay, he's pinned underneath the truck?
Yeah, my husband's lifting up the truck. Honestly, I don't think he's alive.
Okay, how old is your son?
He's 22.
And did your husband get the truck off of him?
He was jacking it up when I was just out there.
Okay, are you with your son right now?
He's not alive.
Is he breathing?
No.
He is not breathing. Okay.
No.
Okay, we're going to start CPR, okay?
Yeah, Carl, they want to start CPR. Do you know CPR? His chest is crushed.
His chest is crushed?
No. He's probably been under here for hours. Oh my God.
All right. What is your first name?
Cindy.
Cindy?
Cindy.
Okay, and your last name is Carlson?
Carlson. Oh my God. This is awful.
The 911 call you just heard was placed after Levi Carlson's stepmother discovered his lifeless body in the barn. He'd been performing repairs under his dad's old truck when it suddenly collapsed, effectively crushing every last remnant of life right out of him. 4 years later, in the interrogation room, years of unbelievable secrets would be revealed, exposing a story so shocking, you'll have to see it to believe it. What investigators would soon uncover was more twisted than they ever could have imagined, reaching much further than the tragic accident in his garage. The majority of the following interrogation footage has never been seen before. Carl Carlson had joined the Air Force and was stationed at the Grand Forks Air Force Base, located in North Dakota during the early 80s. Over the years, he headed a variety of failed business endeavors, including raising horses and a gourmet duck breeding venture. According to his older brother, Carl was never skilled when it came to money management. Of course, this claim will take on a whole new meaning later. In 1983, he married Christina Alexander, and together the couple had 3 children, 2 daughters and 1 son, Levi. That marriage ended in disaster. Carl would marry again in 1993, this time to a woman named Cindy Best. The two met at a line dancing event in Seneca Falls, and they fell in love after Carl told her the tragic tale of his life. More on that later. However, it was the collapse of this second marriage that would eventually lead to Carl's arrest in 2012, 4 years after Levi's death in 2008. Carl was intercepted by Lieutenant John Clear and Detective Thomas Crowley outside a local restaurant in the town of Ovid, New York, where they asked him to accompany them to the sheriff's office to answer some questions, and Carl agreed. Upon arrival just a few minutes later, Carl was led to an interrogation room where the questioning would commence. As the following interrogation unfolds, the story only gets crazier with each new revelation. The detective starts by directing Carl to sit in the chair that's furthest from the door so he feels trapped in the room and ill at ease. The room is intentionally bland with nothing in it but chairs and a table. This is done to reduce distractions and make it feel like an unfamiliar and uncomfortable environment to add to the suspect's stress. The suspect then relies on the interrogators to ease the stress or amp it up as they need to in order to get the truth out of them. If you're a frequent viewer, you may have noticed that the arrangement of suspects and interrogators in the rooms is not always the same. Different interrogators use different strategies depending on their own training, the rooms, the suspects themselves, or if they have safety concerns. However, the way they stage the room and where they have the suspects sit is almost always intentional, for one purpose or another.
Your daughter's a police officer, right?
Yeah.
So you know about your Miranda rights?
Oh, yeah.
The detective mentions they know his daughter is a police officer to put on record the fact that he's likely familiar with Miranda rights and police procedure, or at least more so than the average person may be. Then he proceeds to read Carl his Miranda warnings. In the years following Levi's death, Cindy, Levi's stepmother, started to become suspicious that perhaps his death wasn't an accident, but something far more sinister. In fact, Cindy was so concerned that she began having panic attacks. She knew she had to devise a plan to uncover the truth. It was while watching a true crime show that she had an idea. She decided to secretly record Carl and see if she could get him to confess. First, she told Carl they should separate for a while, and she moved out. Then she told him that the only way she'd get back together with him is if he was honest with her about everything that happened throughout their marriage. Carl agreed, not knowing that Cindy was recording. But her plan would go terribly wrong. The pair met at a restaurant, and to Cindy's shock, Carl confirmed her suspicions and confessed to Levi's murder. However, after she took her recording to the sheriff's office, she realized Carl's voice couldn't be heard on the tape. Still, her suspicion led investigators to reassess the case. They asked her to record him again, this time wearing a wire. Cindy agreed, though she worried that she'd already blown her chance and that Carl may have been tipped off. Not only was she concerned that he wouldn't confess again, but that he might even try to kill her. Regardless, the pair met again at a restaurant, and Cindy's worst fears were confirmed. Carl changed his story.
You're sorry about it, right?
Every minute.
Okay, Carl, and I asked you if you pushed the truck, and you said yes.
I didn't push the truck. I said I had nothing to do, but I said I took advantage of the situation once it happened.
In a transcript of the conversation, Carl says that while Levi was working on the truck, he went into the barn and inched it up, and then it slid. She slid back and zoom.
I took advantage of the situation once it happened.
It was never planned from day one to go that way, from the time we did the insurance. Most chillingly, Carl said of his son, if it did happen, he's done things in life. Now Carl sits in the interrogation room, and in 3 seconds, he'll begin to describe the disturbing events of that day, and things will quickly escalate as the interrogation continues.
Okay, you guys don't know what happened that day.
Tell us about it.
The day that my son died.
Mm-hmm.
Her and I, we had a funeral to go to. Left at 11:30, 11:45, somewhere like that. It was on the other side of Seneca Lake. Son was there.
Notice the way Carl says son was there. It's as if he's checking an item off a list. It seems very distant and highly impersonal. He didn't say my son, nor did he show any emotion or sadness at mentioning Levi.
He helped me. We were working on the truck, changing the transmission lines, brake lines, the whole 9 yards. Talked to him, said goodbye. He was going to work on his truck later in the afternoon because he had to change something. I can't remember what it was. So then we left, come back a little after 4, and went out there and found it.
Carl's story sounds very rehearsed. This may be because he's recited it numerous times to police before, or because he has a timeline of events or an alibi that he's created and is sticking to. The casual and emotionless way Carl discusses how he found his son dead is disturbing and a major red flag of guilt. No matter how many times a parent says those words, one would expect it to bring up emotions or sadness.
Did you say anything before you left?
Just see you later and thanks, or what, just...
So you had gone out to the car with your wife, and then you went into the barn?
Yep, because I forgot to give him the money.
Did you give him the money?
Yep, $50 bill.
Carl would pay Levi with Mountain Dew and whatever cash he had on him, whenever he would work on the truck.
And then what happened? What else happened?
And then I left. Because he was in front of the bumper.
Was the radio on at that time?
Yep.
Okay, what was it playing?
I don't know.
Okay, and then what happens?
And then I left.
You left with Cindy to go where?
To her aunt, I believe it was, to the reception, just a short time. Then we got back at it was after 4. I went out in the garage, and because we were surprised he was still there. If the truck is this way, he was laying this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went in, yelled, banging on the door, and told her to call ambulance, and started jacking it up, and she come out. There's no doubt about, the only jack that was there was the big railroad jack, which is my father's. And it was an old one that they used to use way back when, I guess, what we were told, is it lifted up the old railroad irons. They come in, tried doing CPR, and He was already gone. And they said he had died right around 1 or 2 o'clock. It's right on the death certificate and all that stuff. And I asked him, I said, you know, and it's a question you hate to ask, but it's like...
Well, let me tell you, let me stop you right there.
The detective's trying to get him to stop denying the actual time of death of his son, which is at a time that likely exculpates him. This is a step of the Reed technique. Letting the suspect deny their guilt will increase their confidence, so the interrogator tries to interrupt all denials.
What we know to be true is you pushed that car over.
I did not.
Well, the only thing that remains to be found out is what the reasons were.
Here, the detective uses the first step of the Reed technique, called positive confrontation. The interrogator presents the facts of the case and informs the suspect of the evidence against them, implying in a confident manner that the suspect is involved in the crime. The suspect's stress level increases, and the interrogator may move around the room, invading the suspect's personal space to increase the discomfort.
No,
You know, here's the thing. You confessed to your wife.
I lied to my wife.
If that were the case, why would he confess to a murder he allegedly didn't commit? It makes no logical sense.
You have her wired? And be honest with me.
Yes, we do.
I thought you did.
It's all recorded.
It seems Carl has quite a hole to dig himself out of at this point.
You made difficult decisions, and the fact of the matter is you did what most people would want to do, but don't have a
I don't
chance to do
understand
it.
what you mean by that.
What I mean by that is exactly what you told your wife. Your son, unfortunately, was flawed, like everybody else. And just like you told your wife on multiple times that you did what you had to do, you took an opportunity to benefit your family.
The detective is trying to align himself with Carl and normalize what he did to his son as a way to make Carl feel more comfortable and, therefore, more likely to talk.
You cannot now take those words back. You can't do that.
Well,
it doesn't benefit your family. It's completely against your character, and it doesn't help you any. You were at your finest moment when you were making decisions to benefit your family.
He's developing a theme, which is another step in the Reed method. The proposed theme is that Carl killed his son to benefit his family, and that he confessed because he's a good person.
They call that murder.
I never called that murder.
I do.
That's what you're nervous about now.
No, I just...
You're afraid that you did the right thing, and now you're sitting here saying, oh my God, I'm trying to help my family, and now I'm in trouble.
Okay, what do you call it?
We want to find out what's in your heart so we know what to call it.
I would call that murder.
Why don't you talk to us about what really happened? And then we'll tell you what to call it.
I would call that murder.
The theme is not one Carl is latching onto, as he knows that in society, it's not morally justifiable or legal to kill for money, even if it helps your family out. Many psychopaths understand what society deems acceptable. They just don't follow those rules.
You don't kill your son. You don't kill anybody for money.
Listen, who said anything about money? What are you talking about?
Both detectives feign surprise when Carl mentions money as the possible motive, stating that they never said anything about money. The money Carl is referring to is Levi's life insurance policy, a hefty sum of $707,000.
And nobody thinks because of what happened to Levi that you're any less of a person. I actually think in my heart that I have children, and it must have been the most difficult thing in the world. But you were able to do it. And I'm not saying it's right. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying that you made a difficult decision, and now you have to live with that decision.
Instead of saying he murdered his son, the detective is portraying it as a difficult decision Carl made to try to get him to start talking about it.
I'm not asking you. I'm telling you what we know to be true that came out of your own words. You pushed the car over on your son. You said it. We've heard it. It's a matter of evidence, along with several other things that will prove the same thing. Do not make yourself look like a monster. You did what was in your heart, and now you're trying to pull back because you're now for the first time in your life you're worried about you. Before you worried about your family, now you're actually worried about yourself.
About me.
Is that right?
I've always been worried about me is the exact thought process of a psychopath. They worry about their own needs above all else. Me first, me second, and me last. Psychopaths view people as a means to get what they want. Levi was a means for Carl to get money, nothing more.
You're worried about you now when you should be worried about your family.
Well, the only one in my family right now is me.
The detective knows Carl only worries about himself, and this is all just a ploy to get him to discuss committing the murder.
Now, you said something about money. I don't believe that. I don't believe that you did anything for money. I don't believe that for 1 second, because there's no amount of money that can make that worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
But you brought up money. Did you do anything like this for money?
No.
Okay, then.
Notice how Carl shifts after the detective brings up money. Pay attention to Carl's movements each time money is mentioned.
You know what? I want a lawyer or something, I guess, because I don't understand what... You guys aren't listening to me.
Well, we want to hear the truth.
And I'm trying to tell you, but you're just saying I'm lying. So it's like, I'm sorry.
By law, he must now stop questioning Carl. The detective sits back and lets Carl talk, as he can legally no longer interrogate him without an attorney or without Carl re-waiving his Miranda rights.
She took my son 8 months ago.
You asked for the term. So we're not going to ask any more questions.
Okay. You said, I guess.
I guess, what do you mean?
You said, you said I need to talk to a lawyer, I guess.
However, the lieutenant points out the technicality that Carl only stated, I guess, in regards to wanting a lawyer.
You know what? I want a lawyer or something, I guess.
Do you want to continue to talk to us? Because we'll continue to listen.
Because we can end this now, if that's...
I know.
We'll just go on with what we know.
No, I don't want... I did not have anything to do in Levi's stuff. Not a thing. I did.
You have to let us know, yes or no. Do you want an attorney right now and you want us to stop and just go with what we know?
He presses Carl for a yes or no answer regarding whether he wants an attorney. But his tone and the way he phrases it is somewhat questionable. It may have pressured Carl to feel like he had to say no to needing an attorney. It's also possible that Carl feels that asking for an attorney could make him appear guilty, while staying to talk to detectives could be his best option to prove his innocence. There's always a power differential in interrogations, with the detectives having the upper hand and authority, as well as the comfort of having gone through this many times before.
Or do you want to continue to talk to us and try and work this out? It's up to you. You have to give us a solid a clue. It's called a clear declaration, my friend.
The lieutenant tries to get Carl to re-waive his rights by calling him my friend, touching his arm to appear like his ally, and making it seem like him talking is to his benefit. However, it almost never is.
We know a lot of what happened, but only you, Carl, knows what's in your head.
Oh, I know. I know what's in my head and in my heart.
He gets closer to Carl and stands over him in order to apply more pressure as he invades Carl's personal space.
Don't lie to us.
We know that you were
believing me.
We knew that you were in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And we know that you were...
What does that have to do with it?
Because I respect you for that. Are you proud of the time you spent in the Air Force?
I am. I loved it.
You should be proud of that. And I know that when you were in there, like anybody that does military training, you probably were trained to make life and death decisions.
Right.
I think you just made one. When it came to Levi, I think there was a problem, and you did what you were trained, what you were programmed to do.
No, I don't agree with that.
While the lieutenant is well aware that this is much different, he's trying to normalize what Carl did to make it easier for him to confess.
You do not want a lawyer right now?
Not right at this minute, no.
Okay.
Carl re-waives his Miranda rights, and therefore, the detectives can begin questioning him again. They want to lock him into a confession so there's no chance a jury could find reasonable doubt. There's little evidence stronger than a taped confession by the suspect.
Something's wrong. She's setting me up. She's just setting me up. I mean, how else can you describe it? And I'm like, all right,
Carl, that's not what happened.
Well,
we're adults, we're professionals, and what you're doing now is you're trying to backtrack.
He likely believes that the strongest evidence the police have against him is that he confessed to his wife, so he's trying to undo that confession. The detectives immediately shoot down his story that he was set up and refuse to let him use that theory.
It's not just your own words. We have corroborated that with physical evidence. So it's when you're telling us I didn't do it, it's like you telling us that there's not a 500-pound gorilla here. If there was a 500-pound gorilla sitting right here, it would be the same thing as you saying he's not here.
You weren't there.
Well, tell us what happened.
I spoiled my son,
Okay,
Levi, terribly.
I believe that. How was his life? Levi's.
The detective asked Carl about Levi to try to get an idea of how Carl felt about him and get him to explain how he was a drain on him and the family. Then he can tie that back into why Carl wanted him dead. Levi and Carl were known to have a strained relationship. In fact, by 16, Levi moved out of Carl's house. He was married at 18 to Cassie Hone, and the couple had 2 daughters. After 5 years of marriage, they were divorced, but Levi was said to love being a father.
He was seeing his kids more, he was paying child support, he was doing the whole 9 yards. You know, I mean, it was what a father dreams of.
This backfires, and Carl begins telling them how, before he died, he was doing great and had finally turned his life around. This makes the theory less plausible for the detectives by what Carl is saying. They will have to come back to this topic to discredit him.
You know what a lot of people think? You know what a lot of people think that are involved in this?
No.
They think that you took that insurance policy out and that you did this for the money. I don't believe that.
No.
The detective is separating him from the motive that he did this for the money. Everyone in the room knows that is why this was done, and this is just a tactic to have Carl confess with an alternative reason that is less reprehensible.
No.
That's what they think about it, though. Think about why do people think that?
I know. Oh, believe me, I went through the same thing when my wife died.
When did you wed?
1990.
Make a mental note of this. We'll return to the subject shortly. He moves his hand to rub his upper chest and shoulder area, and he keeps it there for around 4 minutes, which could possibly be a self-soothing behavior. It can also be an indicator that Carl's body heat is increasing from stress. This is where the phrase, hot under the collar, comes from.
We can prove right now that it was you that forced that car over. To me, you know, I think you did it out of a father's love.
The detective is now using the alternative theory technique, where he offers 2 motives, one being that he did it for the insurance money and the other that he did it out of love, to try to get Carl to latch on to the less morally despicable explanation.
And there's no way a man can do it for the money.
No, there's no way.
When you come in here and lie,
Yeah, but
I gotta think that.
No, there's no way. There's no way. Sorry.
Well, then you have to be honest with us and tell us
I am.
you didn't do it for the money.
I did not do it for the money, and I did not do it.
An innocent person would not say they didn't commit murder for money. They would flat out say they've never committed murder, period. This demonstrates that Carl may have not only slipped and then tried to correct himself, but he may also be trying to convince himself that he wouldn't kill his son for money. It's possible that in the privacy of his own thoughts, Carl has made up some other reason or explanation for killing Levi that is easier for him to digest.
Carl, I think deep down, you knew this day was going to come.
The lieutenant again touches Carl using the Reed technique, called getting the suspect's attention. This is done when the suspect is at the point of frustration and unsure of themselves. They may be looking for someone to help him escape the situation. In this technique, the interrogator tries to capitalize on that insecurity by pretending to be the suspect's ally. The detective tries to appear even more sincere in their continued theme development and gets physically closer to the suspect, making it harder for the suspect to detach from the situation. He offers physical gestures of camaraderie and concern by touching his leg.
You mean when you told Cindy that one of the reasons that you took the opportunity to do it was because he was a bird? What did you mean by that?
I don't know. You'll find out my memory's not the greatest because of the medicine I'm on. So it's things don't, I've been on a lot of drugs since 2001.
Carl is beginning to build a possible defense. Apparently, Carl can't clearly remember his conversation with Cindy. This excerpt leaves no question about Carl's intentions on that fateful day.
Carl, you told me that you didn't set it up that way, but when you were in there, you saw the opportunity.
After it had happened, then I saw the opportunity.
But between the methadone, between the fentanyl, between the Vicodin, between all the other crap I take, I could be sitting 2 feet from you. And you're not there. You're not there. You are not there.
What do you mean by that?
You're not there.
You don't recognize if someone's there? Or...
Oh, hell no. I'm looking through you. You're not there. I mean, it was pink elephants flying.
He's giving a million excuses to avoid responsibility, as most pathological liars and sociopaths will do.
It had not occurred to me, but is it that the medicine, you didn't know what you were doing until afterwards? I mean, I don't know.
The detective now tries to use the theme that Carl has proposed. He's trying to get him to confess to killing his son, and because he was so high and messed up from all the drugs, He didn't know what he was doing. The detectives are fine with this tactic as they can always disprove this later. They already know the evidence speaks to a clear financial motive. The detective may have thought it could be easier for Carl to admit guilt if he could blame it on the medication. Notice Carl leans closer to the detective. This theme may be one he'll latch onto.
Is that what happened?
No, I don't. No,
Is that what, we know the act occurred. We don't know what's going on in your head, and that's what today's about.
I don't know what was going on in my head back then.
No, I think we should talk about the insurance. I think we're at that point. We have to address that.
This is important as it's the motive they believe was behind the murder. They also change topics as they realize he isn't going to confess yet, so they're now going to confront him with the motive to try to sway him.
And were you the beneficiary of this policy?
Yes.
Okay.
Carl was the beneficiary, which is rather unusual, given the fact that Levi had children and didn't seem to have a good relationship with Carl.
And what was the policy for? What was the amount?
$300,000.
Was there anything in addition that would subsidize that insurance policy? That would make it greater in event certain circumstances occurred?
Oh, he had, there was, which I didn't know. Mm-hmm. He had, there was accidental death, which we didn't even talk about that I know of. But
were you there when he signed that?
Yeah, I was in the room and he signed it.
Did you sign it as well? Because I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay.
Carl mentions that the policy was for $300,000. He may be trying to downplay the policy's value to the detectives. The base of the policy was actually $400,000. However, Carl had an accidental death rider on the policy as well. This means that if Levi died from accidental circumstances, he would receive an extra $300,000, totaling his life insurance benefit to $700,000. By bringing this up, the detective is revealing evidence that points to Carl planning the murder, showing premeditation.
And what were your plans with that money? What did you tell
Part
Levi?
of it? Yeah. Oh, Levi wanted, part of it goes to the girls.
Did he want you to have it?
I had total control because he did not, one thing, because...
Who spent that money?
My wife and I.
Okay. Did Levi's children spend that money?
No.
Is that who it was intended for?
Well, yeah, well,
It was intended for his children, right?
But we split,
and
no, okay.
And what, the mother of his children, right?
Not for her.
It wasn't for her?
Levi, no.
To this day, does she know that there's a policy?
No.
Carl also saw to it that Levi's ex-wife Cassie was never aware of the policy. According to a statement she made on May 4th of 2012, 3.5 years after Levi's death, she described when she found out about the funds for the first time. I can't believe Carl had an insurance policy on Levi. I'm shocked and sick by this. I was always told there was no money, nothing.
Let's go through it right now.
No,
Before his death, you and him go down and he becomes insured.
Right.
You're the beneficiary.
Right.
For what totals will be $700,000.
Yeah, which I only thought was $300 because I didn't know there was an accidental death. Why would he?
Yeah, why would he do that?
I don't know.
And then he died in an accident.
I don't know.
Yeah, strange.
Now the detective is tying up all the details of the insurance to show how bad it looks. He's hoping that Carl will confess to one of the alternative theories they proposed earlier when he realizes how terrible this one appears.
I know you guys want me to just spill my guts saying, oh, I pushed it over, I killed him, and I can't say that because I didn't.
Although you have said that.
I played the game with her.
Okay, what's that game?
The game is like, the game that I didn't understand.
How did this game work out? You say it was a game. Tell me what's the game?
Carl refers to confessing to his wife about killing his son as a game, but he's unable to give a clear answer as to what he was hoping to achieve by allegedly lying to her.
What game were you playing?
And what about the part
where you were saying, is this a trap? What about that part?
Because I knew it was.
You know what they call that?
Yeah.
Consciousness of guilt.
What woman would have you admit to doing something like that and lay next to you at night? I said, I certainly wouldn't. I said, if you're going to do it once, you're going to do it twice.
Mm. So how did it break out from that point?
We put,
And then, a couple weeks later, I sit down.
In the background of Carl's interrogation, a woman's voice can be heard. This voice is believed to belong to his wife Cindy, who may have also been speaking with investigators in another room at the same time as him. Though the voice hasn't been confirmed to be Cindy, and much of her conversation is muffled, there are two things that can be heard clearly. It sounds as though she says, "There's no doubt in my mind that he did it," followed by, "That was his fault."
They had...
There's no doubt in my mind.
Once...
Probably did both.
He was more afraid that Cassie was going to get money, that she could get her hands on it.
And then they lived in North Dakota.
You know, and it's like, you know, and it was his call. I mean, I sat there and, you know, sort of threw my 2 cents in, but it was all his decision. If they need braces, if they need glasses, if Cassie can't provide something, that money, and Cassie has always known that if she gets in a jam and needs something right now, and it's for the girls, I will get it.
To this day, does she know that there's a policy?
No, he did not want...
And has his children benefit from that money ever?
No, and it wasn't supposed to be for now. You know?
If she feels that when Cassie has come to you before for money?
She's never come to me for money, no.
Have you offered to give her money?
Yes, and I've offered, and like I say, I take out meat to him a lot.
How many times do you think you've done that?
Only once, but a big load, because she...
When was that?
A month or so ago. But I've been after her. I mean, you can check my emails all the time. I mean, you know, do you need meat? Do you need meat? Well, not right now, not right now. I offered her, you know, I buy a Thanksgiving turkey for her. I just feel I owe it to her, you know? And I know she's struggling.
Carl admits that his 2 granddaughters haven't received any of the money. However, despite this, he tries to portray himself as being generous because he once bought the girls and their mother a Thanksgiving turkey, and he took meat to them as well on one occasion. The detective and lieutenant casually chat with Carl to continue to build rapport and to lull Carl into a false sense of security in their presence. If he's comfortable and relaxed, he'll be more open to talking with them about the subjects that are actually important. Also, they're establishing that his memory is good, contrary to his hinting that his medications make him forget things.
I've had some of the tallest horses in the world, and I've had the biggest mare in the world. She weighed 3,200 pounds. She ended up dying, but the bone in the foot rotated, and the bone come out the bottom of her foot. And, I mean...
Did that cause her death?
No, she died in a fire.
Carl begins discussing a barn fire that killed his horses, and this is where the story starts to get crazy.
Oh.
It was a barn fire proven that it had the old cloth wiring in the barn.
He makes the extra step of mentioning it was proven, which is rather suspicious. No one asked if the fire was investigated, and him throwing that in shows a consciousness of guilt. Cindy offered her own account in a statement she provided to law enforcement in 2012. It stated how Carl got caught up in the middle of the night, went downstairs, then returned to bed moments later. He told Cindy he'd used a downstairs bathroom, which she found odd. Within a few minutes, Cindy stated, Carl leaped from bed, looked out the window, and told Cindy to call 911. The barn was on fire.
In the barn, there was no flame. It was just smoke. I mean, it was just smoke. There was no fire at all. And,
Well, why'd you come running out of the house?
Because, well, oh no, there was an orange glow. Like
wait. Was there
hold
smoke or
on.
glow?
No, hold on. Getting back. There was I looked out the window and we had like an inch or two of snow, and there was an orange glow out in the driveway.
From the smoke?
No.
Why am I getting confused?
No, just hold on a second. I got to backtrack here.
All right.
Following the barn fire, Carl was interviewed about the details of any insurance policies he had on the animals that were killed in the fire and the barn that was destroyed. The purpose of the interview was to gather background information to determine whether or not Carl had a legitimate insurance claim, or if the fire could have been intentionally set. In this interview, Carl talks about the discovery of the fire, which has slightly different details than the story he told detectives.
Who actually discovered the fire? I did by looking out the bedroom window. Your bedroom faces the barn and the buildings involved in this fire? No, the bedroom faces the road, but I could see the glow of orange on the ground due to the fact we had a little snow coverage.
He also shares a story eerily similar to one he will tell later about another fire.
Did you try to remove the horses once the fire was discovered? Yes, I went around the side of the barn. We had 2 big sliding doors. I opened up one, and there was so much smoke that it just forced me back.
And that was on the property you have now?
Yeah, that was the home barn that Dad had.
Carl changes the topic to talk more about himself and his own background.
What did you do in the military?
I was top secret security clearance. I put nuclear bombs together.
So what's that MOS? Is there an MOS? Is there an MOS number?
It's a 4433 OG-4 blah 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 blah, and there's other things that it's all top secret. That's stuff that we.
So you weren't a truck driver?
Oh yeah, I drove tractor trailer.
So when did you switch from that to top secret stuff?
That's what it was.
It was top secret because you would haul nuclear weapons.
We had launch code. I carried launch code capabilities. We carried a lot of shit that.
Because you were hauling the weapons.
Oh yeah, and the full-size missiles.
Carl shows narcissistic traits by telling grandiose stories of himself, where he is often the hero. Here, Carl tells an unbelievably crazy story of how he was responsible for assembling and delivering nuclear bombs. Apparently, he was even in charge of making launch codes for the U.S. military. He goes on to say that his delivery truck, which he used to deliver nuclear bombs across the U.S., caught on fire.
Well, now you got fire with a nuke.
That's bad, right? I don't know much about it.
It sounds bad to me.
Luckily, he was, of course, able to put out what he calls
the most serious problem that you can have in the U.S. If I don't stop, this thing's going to burn, and it's going to blow, and we can't run fast enough. So finally, I stopped. I caught hell about it.
What'd you do after you stopped?
We
you ran
got a tire. Right? We got no, hell no. Got the tire iron out, and we unbolted the tires. We started back up, the tires fell off, and the faster I could go, the better it got. And we finally got to a launch control facility, which it looks like a hotel fenced in. They actually allowed us, for the first time, we brought out another trailer, and they actually let us move the nuke. I mean, the first thing you walk in, you learn 36 ways how to kill a guy with your bare hands, because you're hauling a nuke. And when you drive down the road, you got a M16 on your door, you got a pistol, you got an 870 Remington with an 8-inch barrel with a pump on top, aiming out your door. And it's like anybody gets near the truck, you kill them.
How many people do you have to kill to protect the truck?
The hope is that if they can get him to admit to something smaller, such as killing someone under military orders, perhaps it could make it easier to Carl to admit to killing someone else, like his son Levi.
Never on the truck.
That's good.
That's because, and what's funny is our security cops, they have to ask permission to put a round in the chamber. But us, being who we are, we're God. We don't have to answer. I go to work, and once we're off base, shirt comes off, shorts come on, T-shirt, no T-shirt. We didn't answer to the government.
This case has already been a wild ride, but investigators soon uncovered something from Carl's past that's even more twisted than they ever could have imagined. Rewind to the early 1980s. Carl and Christina Chris Alexander met at the Grand Forks, North Dakota Air Force Base and married in 1983. In January of 1984, their first child, Aaron, was born. The following year, their son Levi came along. Then, baby Katie's arrival in 1986 rounded out the family of 5. According to Chris's sister Colette, it was no secret that finances were a constant stressor for the family. After Carl's stint in the Air Force concluded, the family moved to Carl's home state of New York in 1986. Then, in 1988, they relocated once again to Chris's hometown of Murphys, California. A terrible accident then occurred on the 1st of January, 1991.
My wife had passed away, and...
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What was she ill?
No, she died in a house fire.
The couple's home somehow caught fire. Carl managed to get each child out, but Chris wasn't as fortunate.
Oh, in the place you're talking about?
Yeah.
That's probably too
And
much.
I threw my kids. I threw Levi out of the house by his hair, and the girls went out the window on the other end of the house.
How'd they get out the window?
And I broke the window.
Okay, this is where he came in here and he took Levi out.
Yeah, Levi was dead.
This is Levi's bed.
And then you got Levi out, ran around, got the girls with the bat.
And the smoke got her, and her, is what the coroner said. He said she wasn't burned bad, and but he said just remember
was she not with the kids or something? Or?
Well, they were all sleeping, and she was up in the bathroom, and
she got up in the middle of the night or something.
And so she somehow, the way he says, because we had a puppy, a Dalmatian puppy, and we had kerosene heaters in the house. And the dog spilled the kerosene like 3-4 weeks before.
While taking a bath, Chris became trapped in the bathroom. It seems that the fire had ignited right outside the bathroom door, in the very spot the kerosene spill Carl spoke of had occurred. Tragically, Chris died of smoke inhalation. At the time of the initial investigation, the source of the fire was never clearly established, but discrepancies between Carl's recounting of events in 1991 and Carl's current version are overwhelming. He tells the detectives the kerosene spill occurred 3 to 4 weeks before the fire. However, according to documents dating back to the original investigation, Carl originally stated that the spill had occurred a day and a half prior to the fire.
This here's the bathroom where Christina was found.
Evidently, he laid the light out here.
Where? Now that's all documented?
Yeah. It's here. I guess the bathroom door is here. And kerosene got spilled over here. That's where they presumed it started.
They said she was dead when she opened the door. Because they said...
Where was she in the house?
She was in the middle of the house. The house is like 80 to 100 feet long.
And they say there was paper sitting on the kerosene?
There was a piece of cardboard.
Okay, I want a picture of this. Here. I want a picture of this window.
I mean, it was
So she had no
long.
windows to get out?
No. And they
What
figured...
room was she in the middle of the house?
The bathroom.
Oh, so there were absolutely no windows to jump out of?
No. Well, when I broke the window, the fireball came out and burnt my eyes together, burnt my face. I mean, blew me right off the...
After the kids? After getting the kids out?
No, to get to them.
Oh, okay.
And it blew me off, and the kids are still in the house. And my eyes were burnt shut, so I pulled them apart and couldn't see where shit. And my son had got to the window, and I got him by the hair.
This is Levi?
Yeah, and chucked him out. And I got the girls, and
Once again, he paints himself as the hero of the story by detailing how he saved his children from the fire. However, in the time that followed the fire, an investigation was carried out. The tragedy that ended in his wife Chris's death resulted in many unanswered questions, despite the fact that Carl eventually received a life insurance payout in the amount of $200,000. After the horrendous fire occurred, Colette, Chris's older sister, couldn't understand how Carl had rescued each of the 3 children, yet it appeared he'd make no effort to save Chris. In official statements, Colette revealed 2 especially chilling accounts that occurred very shortly after Chris's death. After Colette received word of the fire, she drove the 3-hour trek from her home in Chico, California, to her father's home in Murphys, California. Chris's oldest child, Erin, who was 6 years old at the time, met her Aunt Colette at the door upon her arrival. She told Colette that their house had burnt down and her mother had gone to heaven. What came next was something Colette couldn't bear to hear. According to little Erin, Chris was yelling for Carl, but he'd ignored her. Also, within the very early days following the fire, Colette informed Carl of her wish to clothe Chris for the funeral. Carl responded that she couldn't. When she inquired as to why, he explained that Chris was a crispy critter. Naturally, Colette was taken aback. However, she'd been blindsided so hard by grief that she left that stone unturned. Perhaps she'd endured all she could handle at that time, but she would never forget those words. Decades later, they would finally come back to haunt Carl.
There's no reason he couldn't have got to that bathroom. No reason.
Doing what she could at the time, Colette used a video camera loaded with a tape that started off happily with a family birthday party.
Happy birthday to you.
Tragically, the next thing the tape would record was personal documentation of her sister's murder scene, a murder that was ruled as an accident. Clearly, she didn't believe that this fire was any accident and that Carl had indeed murdered her sister.
they told me at first she was a closet alcoholic. And I'm like, my wife had 1 drink, and that was the first night we ever slept together. And that was the last drink she ever took, so I don't know if you take that as a compliment.
Doesn't sound like one.
You know, she never drank. She was as religious.
Well, I missed something totally. Why would they think she's a closet alcoholic?
Because her blood count or something. But lo and behold, what it was is that I never knew. is that when you die, your blood boils or something, and your body produces alcohol. And I'm like, because they told me she committed. I'm sorry. Not this woman.
The detective comments that Carl has had a tough life.
You've had a tough life.
So I just sit there and said, you know what? I mean, I was making good money.
No, I mean because you lost your wife.
However, Carl thinks he's referring to problems with his house. It doesn't even seem to occur to Carl that he was referring to the losses of his wife and son.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the water.
And I've been through hell in every freaking way.
So you lost your son?
And my wife.
And your wife, and those horses. The horse or horses?
Horses. My big mare and 3 babies. You know, and the thing is like...
Well, I gotta ask, just because now that's brought up.
That's fine.
What? How much was insurance on your wife?
$200 on her. There was insurance on all the kids. It was
You insured your kids?
Yeah, the wife, you know, it was a little insurance policy on each kid.
Okay.
Carl was likely trying to make it look less suspicious that his wife died in the fire by claiming that he didn't just have life insurance on her, but also for his 3 kids who survived the fire. He may have been trying to imply that he didn't kill his wife for money, because if that had been his motive, then he would have had a reason to kill his children as well.
Secure your Kia Forte today. There's no time like now. Kia, movement that inspires.
However, it's quite unusual for a parent to have life insurance policies for their young children in the first place. Back in 1991, after Chris died, Carl reached out to investigators to ask them if they believed he had set the fire. Though he claimed that he didn't, his explanation as to why is baffling, to say the least. He told the investigator that if he had set the fire, he would have burned up the kids, because he loved his wife a lot more than the kids, and they're driving him crazy. That comment was certainly disturbing, but Carl went even further and added that if the kids had gone, he would have $500,000.
Because I had insurance on me when I was growing up. My parents put on us.
He appears to be avoiding any real discussion about Chris, perhaps because he's afraid detectives will try to investigate her death. This is a very different manner in which he normally tells stories, leaving few details out, as he clearly loves to hear himself talk on topics that aren't incriminating.
Well, you remember how Levi's insurance was taken out pretty much soon before his death? Was that scenario?
No, it was farther than that.
The detective is asking this question because he's implying that Carl took an insurance policy out on Chris right before her death, which is similar to what happened with Levi. Carl knows the closer in time to Chris's death, the more suspicious it appears, so he will claim it was further out than it was.
What's your deceased wife's name?
Chris.
So about how long before do you think?
It's.
Was it like in other people's minds, like relatively soon?
It's got to be. I don't know. It's got to be like 3-4 months or something.
Oh, okay. So it was a significant. Well, actually, that's not a long time.
In actuality, the application was signed and the premium was collected on December 12th of 1990, just a mere 3 weeks before Cindy died in the fire.
So she was like 3 or 4 months. She's insured through your job, and then the fire occurs.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, and
It's striking.
Believe me, if anybody.
Were you thinking like, I can't believe how does this happen?
No, I'm like, and my family, you know how some people go through life, and no matter what happens, everything that can go wrong can go wrong.
That's Murphy's Law. You must be.
I live in Murphy's, California.
Well, that must have been Murphy's Law.
And it's like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. You have got to be.
So did you go through the ringer because of that being a suspicious circumstance?
Well, no. It was the fact that she died at home, and they got to go through the whole gauntlet.
Who's that?
The fire department. I never got invested by anybody else.
Oh, so where's the gauntlet?
Just them. I mean,
the fire department pushed through the gauntlet?
Because, well, they're the fire investigators.
So it wasn't a criminal investigation?
No.
So there was no gauntlet. I just want to.
No, it just. I guess when you lose a spouse and you got 3 little kids, and all of a sudden you lost it sounds bad. The shoes and clothes that I wore and the underwear I wore weren't mine.
Instead of saying anything about how it affected him to lose his wife and his kids to lose their mother, He's focused on himself and how he had to wear borrowed clothes.
People gave
We need after the fire?
Yeah, I lost everything. I lost vehicles. I lost every possession I owned.
What about her family was right there, right? Did they help you out?
Yeah, but I'm wearing borrowed clothes.
Yeah, no, that sucks.
I mean, I had a guy that I knew a little bit. He took me down, bought me
You lost all your possessions.
everything.
He mentions losing all of his possessions, but doesn't express anything to suggest that his wife was the most significant loss. Most people wouldn't be concerned with losing their things in a fire when their spouse has died in the same fire.
I'm burnt. You know, I got burns all over my face. My
Do you have
brother.
any pictures from the burns? Did you keep them like that?
I don't. If I do, I don't know where.
Did you have to go to the hospital to get checked out?
Oh, they took me right to the hospital with an ambulance. I mean, eyes were burned shut.
He also talks about how he got burned, but doesn't mention any injuries his children may have had.
It's traumatic. It must be. We had a fire, but we got out.
You know what it felt like? It felt like somebody hit me in the face with 5 baseball bats at the same time.
You mean the fire? I'm talking about the loss of your wife.
Oh, well.
You must have had a hell of a loss with you were living in this place where there was a bathroom that had no window.
Right.
The detectives already know the bathroom had a boarded-up window and are just slowly getting Carl to reveal the truth about the bathroom and the fact that it did have a window that he boarded up.
Did you? Have a lawsuit?
No, because they sued me. The homeowners sued me.
For what?
For burning down their freaking house. There's never any cause. There's the only thing they could say was kerosene. And
So did you acknowledge it was some sort of neglectful thing? Or?
No, they had no smoke detector for renting for California rental codes. They had nothing.
And I can't get over this. Was it like an old window, or was
the window was like that big and it was boarded up.
You should have sued their asses off.
Oh, and I had.
Wait, did you board it up?
What's that?
Did you board it up?
Yeah, we had to because it was no good. But you couldn't fit out of it. You might be able to put a baby out of it. A baby. You and I, or a 80-pound woman, there's no way.
Why'd you board it up?
Because it was all broken. Everything
Window was
shot.
broken?
Oh, yeah. You know, and it's like the frame was shot, the frame of the house was shot. And
when did you board it up?
Like 8 months before.
Carl says he boarded up the bathroom window 8 months before the fire, but according to Colette, the window was still intact during her Christmas visit, just days before the fire occurred.
My family later on came out, got me, and brought me back home because I was just.
When did you
screwed up? A week and a half after she died.
It's no secret that Carl is answering questions untruthfully. For one, he says he moved a week and a half after Chris's death. In actuality, Carl and his children boarded a plane bound for his home state of New York on January 4th of 1991, only 3 days after Chris died.
Do you love Cindy?
I do. I really do. Even to this minute, she had her demons coming into the marriage, which was her alcohol. You know, but at the time, I never knew that.
Why would she try to set you up?
To get everything.
What?
The house.
But there's nothing though, really, right? I mean,
I got the farm. That's 300 and some thousand.
Okay.
Because she knew I was going to go after her for the house and the money for the girls. She has nothing.
Yeah. What's suspicious about Levi's death? In your opinion, what is suspicious about it?
To me?
To us, in your opinion, you're a smart guy. Why do you think we're suspicious of it?
Just, I guess.
Your daughter's a cop, and she's a good cop, when you tell her.
She is
so she must get that from you, being an analytical person. So if you were in our seats.
I don't know. I mean, well, I guess you can look at it, you know.
What is suspicious?
I guess it was, I don't.
Do you see
I guess because I'm the last person that's seen him, and I had the insurance. Well, that's fine. There are a lot of people that way. You know, there are a lot of people that, you know, you're the last one to see him, and I understand legally what has got to be looked into. I'm not stupid. I'd say I'm not a rocket scientist, but in a way I am, yes.
Carl again displays his grandiose attitude by calling himself a rocket scientist. Narcissists think they're smarter and more important than they are, and they have no problem telling you so.
I understand what you're saying, believe me. I mean, I understand what you're looking at, and I don't know. Like
there are some things that you don't know about.
At this point, Carl must be wondering what else the detectives have on him that they haven't yet revealed.
You were gone at the funeral. I'm sorry to interrupt. How long were you and Cindy gone at the funeral?
Over 4 hours.
4 hours.
4.5, maybe a little longer.
Think about that for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
The investigators are about to confront Carl and drop a bomb on his story.
Do you know how accurate they can do with the cause of death based on body temperature, atmospheric temperature?
All I know is what they tell me.
It's accurate. Within, 15 to 25 minutes?
Yeah, maybe.
So there's a big problem.
I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking 4.5, maybe a little longer, because I know it was after 11 o'clock when we left, I think. And we didn't get back till it was like right around, I think, 4:30 or so. Right in, you know.
We revisited all those things and all the things that were done at that time of his death. And we've sent them in to many places. They go to the state police lab, the Monroe County lab. And analysis has been done. They can put it within a 15-minute window. I mean, it's not as precise as we'd like it to be, but basically, or specifically, it was before he left. He died.
When the detectives reveal to Carl that Levi was dead before Carl and his wife left for the funeral, he reaches his arms up to his chest and holds them there, which can be seen as a protective position. He then moves one hand to rub his chest and upper shoulder, which could be a self-soothing behavior to cope with his distress.
Indisputable, it's not up to us. We cannot argue about it. There's no room to argue. Is that Levi was dead. He may not have died in your, and I wish I could say he died in your presence. But when you walk back in there, if you're telling us the truth and saying you had a conversation with him, you're lying because he was dead at that time.
No, I had a conversation with him, I'll tell you that.
Okay. Well, he was either dead when you walked in there or as you walked out. That's fact.
No, well, I disagree because I know the conversation I had with him.
Unless, the only way is if he died while you were there or before you came in. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I'm not sitting here speculating, but, you know, couldn't you died 2 minutes after I walked out the door?
No, and that's the one thing that we beat them on.
Come on.
No, that's what we beat them on. We gave right in the window based on Cindy and based on what you said, and the people who were there, like that fire crew and all that stuff, they were able to eliminate the possibility they died 2 minutes after, or 3 minutes. There's a window there, but when they reverse it. Well, and that's just a fact. That's kind of what it is.
I mean, I think, I don't know what to tell you. I can't tell you something that isn't true. Well,
we don't want that.
And I think, you know, I think Tom I think Tom kind of took a leap of faith with you here.
And that's fine. And I understand you guys are being as nice as you can about it and being as polite. I have nothing negative to say. I mean, yes, I cannot believe I'm in here. Yes, I can't believe that.
But there's something about Levi that haunts you, Carl. I know it does.
Well, the thing that haunts me about it is that your son dies.
Something more than that.
No, nothing else. Nothing else.
Cindy asked you, I know you have secrets. You come back with, so you think I killed Levi.
Oh, by the way, she said on her one message to me, she goes, I know you, I know.
And Carl, the game that you say you're playing, nobody plays that game.
Oh.
Nobody's going to come out and say, I caused the death of my son because I'm going to try and and
well, that's why I kept talking to the neighbors.
As Tom pointed out, what's the end game? There isn't any that makes sense.
Well, that's what I tried figuring out, is that what is she after? And
I think you're afraid to tell us what really happened. I know, in fact, I know. And I know. And I don't know if it had to do with the drugs you were taking at the time. I don't know if it was because of what he was doing.
At that time in his life, he had turned around.
Hi guys, thanks for watching. This is just the second part of the sketch I'm doing for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse fan art. So yeah, I just did Morale's rough sketch real quick. We're gonna come back and clean it up. Then after I clean it up, I might add a few more characters and then we'll start coloring. But yeah, so if you like what you see, feel free to follow. Links in the bio. My Twitter handle and Instagram handle is all Trevally Hall Art, all the same. And I hope you guys have a good one. Until next time, bye.